Hello, dearest listeners. Spirits of the Fringe has returned after a little festive hiatus. It wasn't meant to be this long a break, but winter germs had other ideas. For the first couple of weeks in January, my throat was basically made of sandpaper, and for my first two gigs back as Marcel, I sounded a bit more like a French Tom Waits. And as a side note, back in December, I had a performance horror story that would not have been out of place in my previous podcast, Comedy Cul-de-sac. I was on stage doing an hour's show at London's Bush Theatre, and I just started to get that uneasy feeling, forehead a bit sweatier than usual, clothes feeling too tight around the body, kind of rising feeling in the gut, and about 5 minutes in, I was very obviously going to be sick. Every vibration from the mic just sent little waves of nausea my way. Now, to make my excuses, in character, I might add, and send the audience out to the bar, then exit stage right. I would love to say I made it to the dressing room, but that was not the case. Thanks again to the wonderful venue staff who had to clean up some colourful corridor vomit. I steeled myself, drank some water, took some deep breaths, and went out on stage to give it another go. And it was going surprisingly well for about 15-20 minutes. Then, here we go again. I basically got the tech to play the short video usually intended for the end of the show, and then went and absolutely emptied my stomach of all that was left. Made the target perfectly this time. More water down the throat, a bit on the face, and somehow went on to finish the show, which ended about 20 minutes late, but it did go on. Thankfully, the audience was wonderful, and I can actually say, hand on heart, it was a decent show, if a little disjointed, and I went on to fight another day. Turned out it was a stomach bug I picked up from dear little baby Ronnie, who that morning had repainted a cafe wall with the contents of his stomach during a memorable lunch with my wife and her mum. And they were also quite ill that night, although they weren't expected to entertain a theatre audience for an hour. Still, at least the boy has great comic timing already. Anyway, my guest this time round is no stranger to weird theatrical happenings, sometimes of his own choosing, often not. Jon Bennett is a dear friend of mine from South Australia who I've got to know over the past decade of doing Fringe festivals around the world. Whenever I think of my Fringe family, the collection of fools I get to hang out with at various glamorous and not so glamorous locations, Jon's is the face that instantly comes to mind. His shows mostly comprise of bizarre stories from his upbringing in South Australia and subsequent travels around the world, but as you'll hear, in recent years he's taken on a more experimental tone to what he does. He's basically taken his offstage tendencies to lead people into fun and unusual situations and transported that sense of adventure to the stage. We both share a love of the absurd and always enjoy going to watch something inexplicable at a festival. During one of my tour shows, I once had Jon playing chess with comedian Chris Betts at the back of the stage for a full 90 minutes without ever referencing it. To me, he embodies that Fringe spirit of just giving everything a go. The more weird and wonderful, the better. So it's hard keeping track of where Jon is in the world, but I caught up with him at Perth's Fringe World Festival. Or rather, we managed to synchronise time zones and have a chat via Skype. Here's Jon Bennett. Hi, Jon.
Hi.
Hello.
Am I talking loud enough?
I don't know. I think so.
Do I need to talk loud?
Yeah, I mean... I think you sound good to me. This is we're recording this on Skype, just so you know. So thank you to Skype for the brand new version, which allows you to record voices. Or I hope it does. Find out.
Yeah, the update has brought a drum and bass thing under the phone and for the dial tone.
Yeah, it's gone a bit 90s club track, hasn't it?
Pretty good.
Thing. So hi, you're actually back on home turf, which is quite a rare thing for you.
Yes, I am in Perth. Not really home turf, but close enough.
Well, actually, yeah. I forget how big Australia is. It's kind of nowhere near. It's the most remote city on the planet, isn't it, Perth?
I think so. Well, it's closer to Singapore than any other city, other Australian city.
And I'm in England, 2 or 3 degrees. Got a bit of a cold, if you can tell. What's the situation there?
I've just been swimming at a waterhole with a bunch of other performers, and it's probably 35 degrees. We just saw a bunch of kangaroos. That's pretty much it.
Relaxing in the shade.
It's hot. It's very hot.
Any kangaroo pub this year?
Well, we will go to the kangaroo pub. I think it's this week sometime.
I was about to say, could you describe kangaroo pub? But it's fairly self-evident, isn't it? It
used to be far more a kangaroo pub.
It did. Yeah, I went to a Kangaroo Pub last year, and more of a pub.
More of a pub than a kangaroo pub.
Yeah.
We went where there were kangaroos behind the bar and stuff. That was quite good. That was
superb. I remember my first when Jon first took me out to the Kangaroo Pub, which really is about an hour's drive from Perth. And what's its actual title? It's the
John Forest Tavern.
That's it, the John Forest Tavern, and it's a lovely drive through lots of leafy, kind of leafy wilderness, I suppose. And then you get there, and it's essentially. I think if someone made a film having never been to Australia and what they imagined a pub would be like, it's basically that, isn't it? There's kangaroos behind the bar. I just remember going to get a pint. No barman or barwoman there at all to serve. I just sort of looked over the counter. And there's this little kangaroo looking up at me.
Yeah,
didn't serve me, but
it didn't. But they're just everywhere. They're all over it. And
brilliant.
I find kangaroos quite terrifying because I've seen what they can do to people, but I always take all the tourists and watch them like get too close, and then the kangaroo will growl at someone. I'm like, don't fucking go too close to it.
Yeah. There's that big alpha male there, isn't there? That just growls at you. Just
such assholes.
But they're fun assholes.
They just want your food. They don't give a shit about you, but everyone loses their mind, so it's really fun.
It's great. So. Terrifying, but you know, if you're watching from afar, quite hilarious. But you are basically thank you for doing the podcast. This is Spirits of the Fringe, and you are, I think, Mr. Fringe. Pretty much.
You reckon?
Oh, I think so. Like I think our paths crossed about the same time we kind of first started. But you I'm doing the Fringe circuit, the global Fringe circuit. But yours has been just a fascinating path. You've basically never been home, have you?
I haven't had a home for about 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
So I tour to the festivals all around, and that's sort of the job.
Do you think there's a Fringe that you haven't done?
Yeah, of course. I haven't done Prague. There's all the Scandinavian ones that look interesting.
Yeah, no kangaroos there.
No kangaroos there. I've had friends do them and say they're pretty good. But I definitely have done a lot of festivals, yeah.
And you've got yourself in a lovely position, I suppose, where you have this lovely collection. I was going to say a handful of shows, but it's way more than a handful now. It's just a collection of shows that you're regularly touring, you're regularly rotating and taking all over the place. And now this culminates in, I guess, what you're doing in Perth, doesn't it? That you it's kind of a best of, isn't it? But it's called the nominee, right?
It's called the nominee. So I'm doing all of my award nominated shows, and the audience. So I've done 5 now, and it was the last one where I was like, this is a pretty stupid idea, because it means I've got to have 7 shows knocking around my brain, and I only find out which show I'm doing when the audience chooses it as the show starts.
And this is 7-hour-long shows, isn't it? So you've basically...
it's really affecting. I'm really scatterbrained all the time because I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? And then I have to remember that entire show on the spot, which at the time I was just like, yeah, that's easy. I can do that. That's fine. Now I'm like, whoa, fuck, this is
So you'd think it would be... you'd think that would make you more mentally astute to sort of have that.
No, making me worse.
Has it affected your everyday life?
I'm in another world, yeah. I'm back to when I did the 3 shows a day in Edinburgh type brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because basically, so it's I mean, some people come to festivals and do a best of, and it's, the best little hand-picked bits of their show, and they'll do that the same every night or thereabouts. But it's pick a show that I've done. I will do it now.
Even listening to you said, I'm just like, what a fucking idiot. Why? I could have just done one show.
Well, yeah, but I'd rather that you get some people coming and doing like best of shows when they've done 3 shows. You go, come on, that's not a best of. That's just you running out of ideas. But so list the shows. So what shows could they see?
So they opened with a show called How I Learned to Hug, which is a show about the loves of my life. Then the next night they chose Fire in the Meth Lab, which is a show about my brother going to jail for blowing himself up in a meth lab. Then they did My Dad's Deaths, which is a show about my dad. And then they did Pretending Things Are a Cock, the show about me traveling around the world, make everything my cock. Then they chose Jon Bennett last night, which is a brand new show that I'd only done 5 times before. So that was the one where I was like, well, I'm fucked. I don't know. I can't remember the show or anything. And then there's only one left on Wednesday, and that will be Playing with Men, which is a show about me playing football and masculinity and that sort of stuff. And then on Friday, every show they get to rate it at the end. And then I get to choose which show is the best of all the ones that I are doing for them. And then I do like an encore of the best show there is.
Oh, nice. So hold on.
Myself an award.
So you finally win an award.
That show is going to be the award-winning show, and I get the multi-award.
So you just, I love it. You just like creating your own awards.
Yeah.
Superb.
Well, you've made it.
I have made it. I mean, I've got that pride of place on my toilet wall, as you've seen in my London flat.
There was a thing a couple of years back where I was having a rough festival, and one of my friends who has come to my show was like pretty down on me and being like, when do you think you're going to make it? And my friend said, I reckon he's going to do it at 11:30 tonight. And so we counted down to 11:30 in this bar out in the middle of nowhere in Melbourne, or in the city of Melbourne, and it was packed. And then we got bottles of champagne and popped them, and everyone announced that I had made it. They cheered me around the room, and all these people like, what's happening? And they're like, well, Jon Bennett has made it. So then I decided our friend Alistair Tremblay-Birchall was having a rough Adelaide Fringe, and I told him that story, and I said, you're going to make it. I think you're going to make it tonight. And then we did the same thing. It was a big Thomas Ford was DJing, and we stopped this massive party. We stopped the party. I stood on the bar and said, Alistair Tremblay-Birchall has made it. And then we popped champagne and cheered him around everywhere. And
you stopped a huge weekend party to share an in-joke with a bunch of people who didn't get the joke.
When he was feeling sad about his shows, I told him that story, and I was like, I've felt different ever since. And then we did it with him, and then he's like, I have felt different ever since. And that has gone for years now.
I have felt different
someone has made it.
Ever since. There you go. Try denying that you are Mr. Fringe. That's a delightful thing to do. It's great.
This year yet. I got to find someone to make it.
But you have this way of sort of getting people along with these stupid things, like the audience and performers alike. Yeah. Because there's one, I was going to come to this later, but let's talk about it now. No, let's talk about it later. The Rabbit Night, we'll come to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about these shows first, the sort of gamut of shows that you're doing as part of the nominee. So it started with, the first ever one was Cock, wasn't it? It was Pretending Things Are a Cock.
Yes. That was the first show I did.
Yeah. And so that was, how did you categorize that? Because it was your first show, wasn't it? And it was storytelling, but it was comedy. Obviously, it got a comedy audience because of the title.
Yeah.
It was comedy section, was it?
Well, no, that started because what happened was I'd stopped doing sort of as much stand-up and stuff, and I did a bit of TV stuff in Melbourne, but I was hitting the end. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I had the Saturn's return when you turn like 26 or whatever, and I decided to go traveling. And by this time, me and my housemate had already we were posting photos on Facebook of us making like with toothbrush, and then we were making them like black and white photos and posting them online, and we called it Pretending Things Are a Cock, and it was purely just for our friends to see that we were being idiots at home.
Sure.
And we'd name them, and then we did that, and then I had the Saturn's Return thing, and I went traveling for a year, and I thought that's a good way to do a thing, and people travel and they do a handstand or they bring a little toy or something like that. So I thought, I'll make a cock of everything around the world. And then I came back from traveling, and it's become quite popular. I think I made a fan page on Facebook, and it got like 10,000 followers in the first 2 weeks. And I was like, oh boy, I thought this was just for me and my friends. And so it became a thing, and I thought I would try and benefit off that. And so I had an art exhibition at the Adelaide Fringe.
And they say Australia celebrates low art.
Yeah. And so we blew up all the photos. Like, it took a long time, like, framed them. Nice. Proper, like, official gallery in Adelaide had agreed to put them up, but it was right next to the comedy club, the Rhino Room. So we just had this exhibition, and I sold books of all the pictures, and then I started doing tours of, because I thought that was a stupid thing. So we did like have a meet the artist, and people started coming to that, and I'd like walk them around the gallery and tell them the stories behind the thing, and that's how that show became. Yeah. And now it's not a gallery, it's just show pictures on a screen.
That's still in demand, isn't it?
Tuxedo Cat.
Oh, was a Tuxedo Cat was where I saw it. Yeah, it was sort of the absolute glory days of the Tuxedo Cat. It was sort of days of you and me and Dr. Brown, Pat Bircher, and Josh Ladgrove doing his sort of early Neil Potenza shows. Yeah, it was.
He was the show after mine that year, and it was just nuts. But the thing I think that made people recognize the Cock Show is because it was in that gallery before all the comedy shows that were on in the Rhino Room. So all of the comedians, these sort of bigger comedians that were performing at Rhino, their green room was the gallery. So they all saw it. So like Sam Simmons knows me because of that. Arj Barker and these guys all come up to me now, which is so weird because, well, I wouldn't go up to them because I'm scared of them, but they will come up to me and be like, I saw your exhibition that year in Rhino Room. So it sort of went from there.
That's great. So you're into the comedy world was through cock art.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
That's how. I mean, I was doing stand-up well before that, but it was not.
Oh yeah, of course. But you had to use a certain part of your body to get known. Well, not actually using other things. Yeah. So how was that categorized? Was that what section was that in? Was that billed as a comedy show?
Visual art.
So that was visual art.
Yeah, so it was in the tiny section at the start of the book or whatever of visual art. And it was free, so anyone could go. And that's when I was like, I need to start trying to make money off of this. And that's when I did the like $5 for Meet the Artist type thing.
Great. And then after that came My Dad's Deaths, wasn't it, the next one?
Yes, yep, that was next. And that is, I had started doing storytelling then. I ran storytelling in Melbourne, which was a bit of a new thing as far as, for Melbourne especially, where they didn't really have any storytelling nights. And so I hosted this storytelling night where we'd have a little couch on wheels, like a little armchair, and it had a lamp attached to it. And we'd wheel it around town, put it in a bar that would have us, and then you turn the lamp on, and then someone tells a story. You turn the lamp off, your story's over. It was that sort of thing.
That's great.
Yeah, and I hosted that for like 3 or 4 years, and that's how I got into the storytelling side of stuff.
What became of the armchair? I'd love to think that it's still there somewhere, and every now and again, someone just sits down, switches on the lamp, and just starts telling a story.
There's a guy called Dan who is a poet, and he took it. He's got it, I think.
Oh, great! So it lives on.
He's married to Missy Higgins, who was a mid-2000s pop star. So maybe she's got it. But and so My Dad's Death was far more storytelling based, about how many times I thought my dad was dead growing up. Yeah, because he's very accident prone and melodramatic, and that was sort of the show that made people be like, oh, he's not just a cock.
Well, yeah, because that's the trouble with shows like that. I was going to say like niche shows like that, but I suppose gimmick shows. I suppose it wasn't a gimmick show, but I suppose it could have been seen as such. You could have been the cock guy, and then actually it became evident in the next few shows you did that you just had this wealth of family material, family-based material, travel stories, or kind of all these weird things that have happened to you. So Dad's Deaths. Then was it Meth Lab next?
Then Meth Lab after that, which was about my brother. So that sort of happened where I would tell stories about my brother in the show about my dad, and then everyone was keen on that. So I was like, oh, okay, he's got a bit of a story. So I used his like how that happens, how someone becomes addicted to drugs. And yeah, even the dad show, when I was doing that, I remember doing Edinburgh, and they were like, oh, great, another comedian doing a heartfelt my dad's dead show. And that whole show is a trick where everyone thinks he's dead until the very end, when I'm like, nah, he's still alive. He's just... Yeah.
It's lovely. And that was then billed as a comedy show or a theatre show? What was that? Or spoken word?
No, that was comedy.
Yeah.
All the rest have been billed as comedy storytelling, I guess.
And do you find there's like a little bit of pressure when you do that to to have as many gags as a comedy show? Because there are great jokes in it, obviously, but it's kind of it is storytelling.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when people have that expectation that it's going to be that, and some people are pleasantly surprised. And it's always those bastard comedy reviewers who are like, well, it's not the format of
I thought it was going to be.
And you're just like, come on, mate, just do it as it is. It's still, everything is comedy if there's comedy in it, really, right?
Well, it's like when I saw people. There was sort of a backlash after Nanette.
Yeah.
For a while of people go, wait, it's not a comedy. How can you call that comedy? And you just look at it and you go, there's some brilliant comedy in there. And it does what comedy should do. It mines the sort of things that aren't said, and it kind of it gets to the heart of things, which is the whole point of it. The limitations of comedy. It really annoys me when people when reviewers especially go to a show and go, this isn't what I think comedy should be. It's like, look around, are people laughing?
Yeah, it's really weird. Food's food.
Yeah, it is.
You can eat a bit of wood, and that's food. Still, you've eaten it. It's food.
I imagine you have, and I imagine that will work its way into a story at some point.
I just thought of that then. I was just like, come on. Yeah, well, I don't understand why you've got to I guess with reviews and stuff, you've got to find something to comment on. But yeah, it does. It's annoying when that happens. And I think it was. Who said this to me? Stu, I think. Stu Goldsmith.
Stu Goldsmith, yeah.
After he saw Fire in the Meth Lab, and he was like, this is a comedy show. Like, everyone told me that it was storytelling, and he's like, there are more or the same amount of laughs that there would be in any comedy show in this, and you're telling a story. So he was a bit defensive on it as well, where he was like, that's really sucks that everyone put it that way. Yeah, but my new show was far more storytelling and less jokes.
But of course, you seem to have more than most when it comes to a wealth of true stories, of like real life fucked up stories. I mean, what was your upbringing then? So
I don't know what it is. It's just being able to observe them, I guess, right? It's just being able to know what is and what isn't.
I guess, but to have just lived those experiences as well, because it was South Australia you were brought up, wasn't it? So rural.
Yeah.
South Australia was sort of fairly irregular sort of upbringing, I guess.
It's an interesting thing. I was talking to a guy who did a storytelling show about his parents, and he had a line in it that was like, I had no idea that my life was different. This was just my normal. Like, this was our normal. And both of his parents have cerebral palsy.
Right.
And he didn't know until he was 16 years old.
Wow.
So he didn't know that they had cerebral palsy. He knew there was something, but he didn't know exactly what it was, because they never brought it up, because that was how they were.
Just your mum and dad.
Which I found fascinating.
Yeah, isn't it? What a revelation. Like, oh yeah.
The way he found out, his dad came in and said, we're in the paper. And he read the paper, and it was an article on his mum and dad, and it was like 2 adults with cerebral palsy have a child, like this sort of thing. And it's so weird.
Yeah, because to him, it's like, well, that's not a news story.
Yeah, he didn't even care.
Why is that in the paper? As it kind of should be.
It belonged in the paper. Yeah, it's really funny.
And so because you've, did you get a little bit, am I right in saying that you've had a few people come to the Cock Show expecting it to be something else?
Yeah, of course. And that's my favorite thing to do, is to play with people's expectations. So people think it's going to be puppetry of the penis, of course. And then it's actually quite a nice storytelling show about traveling and doing this stupid thing that has allowed me to meet lots of people and have these experiences that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to have. Yeah.
Well, yeah. When you started doing that, was there a plan? Was there, or did you? I suppose you didn't expect it to kick off as much as it did.
Yeah, it was just a thing that I was doing for mates at home who wanted to see where I was and what I was doing, and it was sort of Facebook was quite early on.
Yeah,
and yeah, it was just that sort of thing, and it was purely just for me, purely for my mates, really, to make my mates laugh.
So there was no plan. You didn't know that 10 years on you'd be doing handful of shows all around the world. That's great. And so there, do you ever miss home, or is the concept of home, or are you now just a solid nomad?
Yeah, well, I was doing that show in London in October, and the other guy on the bill was the Guardian reporter guy who sort of did this interview with me. And he's like, he just couldn't comprehend that I don't have a home. I tour constantly, and he just couldn't get it. And he's like, do you ever think about settling down somewhere, or, finding a base and using that? And I was like, yes, every single day.
But this compulsion.
I'm in Perth, I'll be like, oh, yeah, I could probably live here. And then something will happen. I'll be like, oh, no, not here.
Right.
Yeah. But I think maybe I might have next year off, so that could be a thing.
Entirely?
Yeah.
Do you think your brain would cope with that? You think it won't implode under the weight of all these shows you've had to remember?
Well, I lived in Wellington in New Zealand for about 2 months last year, and I went crazy. I was like, I got to get out of this place. I can't handle this. And I was doing gigs all the time. I was doing tons of stand-up. I was touring around New Zealand, all of this stuff. And that was another one where a friend of mine, Jerome, who runs a lot of gigs in Wellington, and I was like, I feel like I see you all the time. I feel like I see you, Jerome, all the time. We're always at the same places and all this. And he was like, yeah, that's called living somewhere, John. That's what happens when you live somewhere. You see the same people all the time.
And your brain just couldn't handle it anymore.
Couldn't do it. Lost my mind.
But at least, like, you've got to the stage now where you're kind of you are known the world over on the festival circuit, and obviously you've been picked up by the Moth as well and started doing these sort of eminent storytelling nights for them. Where's that taking you? Very recent development.
In the States and to London we did, and they just do these massive shows in like prestigious venues. I did one at Cooper Union in New York City, which is the Democrat presidential candidates all speak there, and that's where their base is. So they told us a million times that Obama and the Clintons and Abraham Lincoln and all of these people have all spoken in this spot where we did the Moth, and it's quite an amazing thing to it's a completely different audience to stand up, which is quite funny as well.
That's awesome. And you're there on stage talking about shooting your dad.
Yeah. Talking shit. Yeah.
How does that go down in the States?
Oh, I love it. I do that all the time. I always say there's a line in it where I'm like, I don't know if anyone's held a gun before.
Yeah.
Oh, we're in America. You're probably all holding now. And say, I've never touched another gun again after that because it's illegal to do that.
Nice.
It's illegal for me to touch a gun here.
So that's cool. Like, what's have you got more Moth dates planned then?
Yes, I'm heading over in March to do a bunch more stuff with them, but we'll see. It's sort of a booking by booking basis with them. But I've been doing stuff with them for the last 3 years.
Do you really feel the pressure doing that first one?
Yes, they very much. It's very NPR. You've got to be a certain way.
Right.
You're not allowed to swear, and it is a lot of pressure for I would say for a comedian to do something like that.
Yeah, what's so you have like a swearing a swearing limit, do you?
Only I'm allowed to swear twice. Because the story is about my dad never saying a swear word. So
I like that restriction though. That's quite nice. Like to just have those two moments where you're allowed to. That's quite a good restriction, I'd say.
Yeah. And so, it is quite daunting. I mean, you've done this as well. Like whenever you do a show to lots and lots of people, it's almost impossible to die. It's almost impossible to do badly.
It is a weird dichotomy, isn't it? That you sort of,
you also don't want to be that one person who dies in front of 3,000 people or something like that. So it is that's the nerve-wracking thing.
I did a show, it was a benefit show a few years ago for War on Want, and it was at the Shepherd's Bush Empire, which I think it's like a 2,000-seater, and I sort of knew all the comics on the bill except one backstage, and I just thought it's a slightly older guy, and I kind of thought maybe he's like just from a circuit that I haven't done for a while, like the Northern Circuit or the Scottish Circuit, someone who's come down who I just don't know. And turns out he goes on stage and someone explains to me, oh no, that guy, he's paid, I think it was like £1,000 or something to the charity to just go and do a set, to go and do a short set. And I said, like, what is he, an open mic comic? No, he doesn't really harbour any desire to do comedy. He said he's done it once before. I was like, okay, where was that? And he goes, last year at the same gig. And that's all.
Wow.
And you know what? Fine. He went on and he did fine. He did good. He did well, He went on and the material was obviously nowhere near as polished as the rest of the comics on the bill or as well written or anything like that. But he had the balls to go and do it, and he did it, and it was fine. and it's this crowd of people going, "We're with you."
Well, with a charitable audience as well, like those sort of things are always different, It's like when you do a free gig and you're like, oh, okay, no one cares about this show.
Yeah.
You're here for free.
Yeah.
People who've paid and are paying to do charity, like for a cause, are ready to respond, which is a lot of what the Moth is as well. They're a not-for-profit, and
I'm sure. Yeah, so you get good people watching.
But it's the same as it's similar in a way, but exactly opposite to doing cruise ships. I've just started doing the cruise ship gigs.
Oh, really?
And they have paid nothing to be there. They're paid like 10 grand to be on the cruise ship, but they do not care about you or your story or.
That's amazing. How long do you have to do on a cruise ship?
45 minutes.
What?
Of pure it's just wrangling, really. So storytelling is, God knows why they want me to do this. I don't understand, but they just do not care about your story. It's very interesting audience wise. And
so who are you on the bill with? Is it a variety bill?
Yeah, it's like magicians, and there'll be a comedian, and because they haven't billed me as comedy either, it's so strange. And I've bemused audiences, but I was just going to say that they also have like, you can't swear, you've got to be clean, you can't be political, you can't talk about presidents, prime ministers, you can't talk about anything disgusting, or you've got to really be a niche of an act. And I heard there was a guy who was like, I'm never going to do this again, and just tore the roof off the place, but like swore.
Was never asked back.
Disgusting things, and was never asked back, but did amazingly well.
Of course he did. It's like whenever I go and play, I don't know, like small town studio theatre gigs, for example, and it's full of slightly older crowd and a slightly more sort of middle upper class crowd, or sort of something where you just think there might be a bit more demure. And there's so many times I've gone, maybe I should cut back on the filth here a bit, or cut back on the swears. And then I see another act go on before me, and just like, oh no, they love it.
Yeah.
It's that thing of just prejudging your audience. It's such a shame that I can see why they feel the need to do that. But at the same time,
weird. So weird. I find that sort of stuff so strange.
But so what do you do? So you're not even allowed 2 swear words here. What do you do for them?
So on the cruise ships, I did my dad's deaths, which is kind of a nice show, and I can't swear in it, even though it's all about him swearing. And I just do like a very normal type show, very dumbed down, but the same beats are all there, so that one's fine. But then the last cruise ship, they had me do 2 different shows, so they didn't tell me. So I was like, oh, I have to do another show that is also clean, no nothing, none of this. And I was like, well, what do I do? So I turned Fire in the Meth Lab into a family-friendly show.
Fire in the pharmaceutical building.
Which, surprisingly, didn't go down too well. Yeah,
you can't really... When you cut the content out of that, you can't use this. That's a 7-minute show, isn't it?
And It was on Boxing Day, and it was like a 800-seat big beautiful theatre.
God, and everyone's just full of Christmas food and booze.
Oh, everyone's hungover and everything. There was possibly 40 people there in the audience in a massive room, and you can't gauge anything there. And then at one stage, it doesn't matter. I read these dumb Jason Donovan questions out to the audience, and an audience member went, "This is torture."
Oh God! Oh God!
I said, "Yes, it is for me also. This is my hell." Yeah,
but they can leave. Surely they can go and just, I don't know.
Yep.
Look over they can leave the room. They can go and look over the starboard or the port, or go and play.
They can go and gamble. They can go and drink. They can go and do whatever. But
he stayed through the torture.
A friend of mine who also got picked up to do storytelling shows on the ship managed to walk the entire audience.
Oh my God!
Like not one person left. And
please tell me he just carried on.
Yep, well, he has to. You get paid very well. He walked 500 people.
Oh God! What was that show?
I won't mention it because
sure. All right.
He just was not prepared and just not ready to do it. And oh boy! And even when I walked on, they were like, "Please don't do what he did," and that put the fear of God in me as well. But yeah.
So do you get taken aside then, like, after these and given notes, or like going, don't do that? Yeah. Really?
Yeah. So the last one I did, the entertainment director who he knows a lot about comedy. He's an ex-cop who has not seen any comedy, just organizes it. He, after the last show, he just went, "Just not for us, mate. Bit too modern."
Bit too modern.
Bit too modern for our liking. Yeah. That was great. And then they rate you out of 10. And if you
your face.
No, thank God, no. But yes, it's just rough. It's rough in every way, but it's an easy way for people to make money.
Yeah. So from being judged and from having to be sort of as close to perfection as possible with the Moth, let's go the other side, shall we? And let's start talking about the weird shit when it got weird. So Rabbit Night era.
Yes.
This is when you broke away.
Do you want me to explain Rabbit Night?
Please do. It needs explaining.
Okay. So Rabbit Night, I came up with probably it's a what do you call it? It's influenced a lot by the Gorilla show.
The third or fourth mention now of that on the podcast. Yep. We'll come to that.
Yeah. So it is. I thought it started as a little bit that I did in Edinburgh, where I think Dr. Brown was running it, and he said it's a thing where you do something brand new that you've never done before, and you possibly will never do again. Mm-hmm. So I had a rabbit outfit that I wear in my dad's deaths, and I grabbed a bunch of carrots. I got techno music to play, and I just ran out on stage screaming, "It's rabbit night, it's rabbit night, it's rabbit night," and violently throwing carrots out at the audience, bouncing around, telling everyone to get up and bounce around. "It's rabbit night, it's the best night ever." And then doing that for far too long, getting the house lights turned on, and then saying, "Why is no one else dressed like a rabbit? Does no one know what rabbit night is? Why are you here? What's going on? Does no one know what rabbit night is?" And the audience is very confused. And then I cancel rabbit night. I collect back all the carrots one by one and walk off.
I've just had a vision of you doing this to 500 people on a cruise ship.
Oh, I did it. I did it at the Woodford Festival to about 800 people, and it was pretty great. But
awesome. Well, the Woodford, I mean, that's as far removed from a cruise ship as you can be. That's the Woodford Folk Festival, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great festival. But then registrations for new shows came in for Melbourne, I think, and I had just done Rabbit Night, and I just wrote to my producer, just like, let's just call it It's Rabbit Night, and I'll try and make a show from that. So now it is basically that same thing, but for an hour, and so I do that at the start. No one's dressed as a rabbit. I cancel Rabbit Night, and then we just sit there. And footage of rabbits and cartoons of rabbits just continues to play on the screen behind me. And I'm like, they don't know what this is. Can we turn this off? And my tech, who's also dressed as a rabbit, is like, nah, we can't turn it off. And I'm like, everyone go get your money back. It's not Rabbit Night. You don't know what it is. None of this makes sense. And then like things pop up. It's like rabbit nap time, and my tech runs around with blankets for everyone. And I'm like, no, they don't know what rabbit nap time is. There's another one that comes on with like pounding techno music and rabbits bouncing around everywhere. And it's a rabbit orgy time. Yeah, right. And that happens twice. And my tech runs through throwing tissues and condoms out to the audience. And I'm like, they don't know about the orgy. They're not here for that. There's like rabbit dance, rabbit film time where we watch David Lynch's The Rabbits, which is just horrific. And then other performers are allowed to interrupt the night whenever they want with a night they think it is that it's not. So you came in one time wearing a frog thing and said it's Ribbit Night. You did Rabbit Night as well. We've had people dressed as
I did that. That was me
coming out as Rabbi Night.
Yeah, and I think it was me coming as a Welshman.
Yes, and they can come out whenever they want, talk for a bit, realise that no one is there for what they're there for, and then walk off. And rabbit footage just continues to play, and then we ride out the 50 minutes. And then my tech gets a phone call, and he says, he talks to someone for a bit, and then he's like, "Oh, it's tomorrow night." And I say, "What?" It says, "Rabbit Night, it's tomorrow night. We just got the dates wrong." And so I tell everyone to keep their tickets, come back tomorrow night for Rabbit Night. Remember the rules. Everyone must be dressed as a rabbit for Rabbit Night to happen, so that then possibly when I'm doing a run of shows, more and more people come dressed as rabbits, and I have to do Rabbit Night, and I don't really know what Rabbit Night would actually be, except that it has orgies, dances, sleeps, naps, and videos in it.
What you're saying is it's a long build-up to one punchline.
Yes, that is exactly it. And it's never happened. Half the audience has come dressed as a rabbit before, but they were very angry with the other half of the audience.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like I was saying before, you have this knack of just getting people to play along with this, however stupid it is. But did you get people, because when you started doing that, you were then known as the comedy storyteller.
Yes.
So were people ever angry that you had not delivered on that front?
Oh, for sure, definitely. And then same do. I try and read into that a bit. And if they want a story, I will tell them a story, or I'll talk about something. We'll talk about times when we were disappointed or something like that. And it's just a rough thing of that as well. But we do get some very disappointed people. I think in Adelaide, before I did it, it got like the top theatre pick in the main paper. And my friends who knew what the show was like, "Oh no, people are gonna hate this," and and they did,
But did they ask for a refund?
Well, the refund is offered at the very start, so yes, they did. It does not make me any money, that show.
But do you still do it?
I do, yeah. Every now and then. Every now and then. I do it more as like a late night, like cabaret bit, or yeah. I haven't done the full one for a while, but I think I will. I think I'm going to do it in Edmonton this year as a late night show, just to mess around.
Well, because I
still like it.
Yeah, I like it's. I mean, you've no idea where it's going to go. It's one of those ones where it's as fascinating watching what's going on stage as it is watching the audience and their reaction to it. And
but it's also terrifying. It's the most terrifying show to do because you are really messing with the audience. And you don't know how they're going to respond. So I have had some shows where they're like, no, we paid money, do Rabbit Night. And I'm like, do you understand what's going on? You do know that Rabbit Night is not a thing. And I don't say this, but they're like, no, do Rabbit Night. Do it. I'm like, geez, I don't know what to do with this. Yeah.
Angry late night Australians.
It's tough. It's definitely a show that I've had the worst audiences ever.
Fine. But
kind of my fault.
Yeah, well, kind of your fault, but you're not, like, you want it to work. It's not like you're doing an avant-garde art piece, is it, where you're, like a noise band or something where you're just trying to
I still
enrage the audience. Yeah.
I still want to put on a show.
Well, because I thought that was the weirdest it was going to get, and then you started doing But Different with Pat Hurst.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was the sort of natural progression of that, I guess. There's no show, is there?
That is no show. Yeah. That's just where we do a show called But Different. It's always me and another performer, and we just say to the audience, we will do whatever you want. And when you want what we're doing to stop, we give them whistles. They blow the whistle, and we do whatever else they want. So it's very much taking on that like dance monkey dance, but trying to put it on the audience as well.
But how do you sell that show? What's the blurb for that show? Like how do you list that as well? Is that listed as comedy?
Yeah, that's listed as comedy because most people want comedy. But we did a few ones that got real dark and sad, and people wanted to know about my friend, my co-partner in it, his upbringing or something, and he told this just really sad story about his mum dying of cancer and things like that.
Yeah.
But it can go that way. If that's what they want, they don't blow the whistle, then that's what they get. You'd be hard tried to be an audience member and blow the whistle while someone's telling a heart-wrenching story.
Yeah.
They did. Then he tried to do it again, and someone did blow the whistle and said, "This is a comedy show. We don't want to be sad."
Wow. But how did that go with the rest of the audience?
Sorry?
How did that go with the rest of the audience?
That we all hated him.
Sure.
We all hated the guy for doing it, but we did it because that's the rules of the show.
Wow. Because that not only... Well, that sort of group mentality, that sort of thing relies on someone in the audience not being a wrong-un, Like, are these free to get into the But Different ones, or do they?
No, we make people pay for that one.
Who pays?
But we always offered money back at the end, which is a good way to do it, I think.
I love how you got to this stage of the career where every show now just offers money back.
Yeah. Well, Steve Sheehan does that thing where people walk in and he gives them $5, a $5 note back.
That's right.
And then they get to choose whether they would think it was worth it back.
Yes.
So I love that idea.
What a brilliant act he is. Yeah, I forgot it's Steve Sheehan, yeah. So I mean, we were going to talk about this anyway, but the gorilla, it's been mooted that you have been the gorilla because you've been involved in so many gorilla shows.
Yes.
This is a young, for those who haven't listened to the podcast before, a young man dressed as a gorilla, dressed as a young man, sits rocking in a rocking chair for 56 minutes and then leaves. Is the show.
Isn't it a young man dressed as a gorilla dressed as an old man sits in a rocking chair and rocks?
Did I get that wrong?
Yeah. It's all right.
Sorry, forgive me.
Yes, I've just facilitated that show at a lot of festivals around the place. and just because I like it as a thing, and I like that it's a staple of every festival. And if the festival won't put it on, well, I offer to do it. And
but you deny that you are the gorilla, or the young man, I should say.
No. The gorilla just shows up, and I agree to meet them out the back, and we sneak them in, we sneak them out, and that is all that it is.
So
that's what I offer.
This has become a bit of a detective show now. This is the subtext of this podcast, that I'm now going to make it my life's work to find out who this is. And I assume you're not going to give anything away, or?
Well, my thing is always like, it's like whenever I am attributed to the show and people say that it's my show, I say, no, it definitely is not. I have had to write to like local papers and say, please, this is not my show. I am just putting it on. I'm just finding a venue for it, and it just happens. And there was one year where they didn't want it, and the gorilla showed up and just did it anyway.
So you hang on. So did you get in touch with the gorilla, or did the gorilla get in touch with you? Let's call it young man. That's what it says on the poster.
Yeah, I get in touch with the email that the gorilla has.
Okay. We'll talk outside this podcast. My sleuthing.
I'm about to head to the gorilla show right now.
Oh, really? Where are you, in Perth? Yeah.
Yeah. It's on in the Teatro, one of the biggest.
I know how big that is.
Venues in Perth. And who knows who's going to go to it, but people are pretty excited.
Is it like 300 seats?
Yeah.
But wow.
I think it's that one. Yeah. But this time the festival did contact me, and I didn't even have to do anything. The gorilla was already set up and ready to go.
Amazing. That's so good.
Just going to it. I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to see it.
Because I've been to a few of these over the years as well, and I think you and I again have this mutual fascination for things like that. Which, you've taken it further than me, but it's so interesting to watch it. It's so interesting to see the different reactions. I remember there was one in Melbourne, and it was the first. Well, because I saw like an early one in Edinburgh, and the early one in Edinburgh was basically no one knew what it was. And so there were confused people. There were people getting up and walking out. There were people who started chants. There were people who would tentatively get up and try and take a picture with the gorilla. And it was all this bafflement, like nobody knew what was going on. Cut to a few years later, and suddenly everyone knows the thing. And so it becomes about them. And there was one in Melbourne. The Melbourne one was really interesting because it was the first one there. And like no one got up in 40 minutes to do anything.
Yeah. Which I secretly like. I like that. I often like
purist.
You always say this. I'm the purist of the gorilla. Yeah. I believe in it as just a show. It is what it is. It is what it says in the box, and that's what happens. But then I can't remember if I came up with this rule or someone else did, where it was like, it's what it is it's high art. That's how it's supposed to be seen. It's high art, and you are allowed to interact with the performance. If you add to the performance of the gorilla in the rocking chair, you are celebrated, you're cheered. If you take from it and make it about you and take away from the performance, then you are booed and ridiculed. That's
Agreed.
My understanding of the rules.
Well, that is the danger of putting on such a show at any arts festival, is you're going to get narcissistic performers up there straight away making it about them. And
so whenever that happens, I am the first person to boo. I'm always like, nope. And I've started doing a thing now where I walk around, and anyone who does stuff, I'm like, I don't come to your show and, change your hat.
Oh, the old hat change.
I to the stage where I'm making people feel bad for taking away from this high art performance that we're seeing.
So you try not to get involved yourself. You just sit back and watch.
I just watch. I used to get involved a little bit. We had a really good one in Winnipeg where it was an amazing one, and I set this one up, and they wouldn't let us do it in the theater. So we met the audience at the theatre that it was supposed to be at, and then we walked them to this underground, like second-hand rummage store type thing. And so everyone is about 120 people packed into this little thing watching this gorilla rock. And we walked them for like 10 minutes, 10-minute walk to this place, and they all came. And then me and my mate found this massive mirror, and we walked in front of the gorilla and just held the mirror at the audience watching and said, like, this is what you look like.
High art.
Yeah, that was great.
It's high art. So what have been some of your highlights from Fringes all over the world? I mean, you've played all over, haven't you? You've gone and done the Canadian Fringe circuit. What's that?
Highlights of the gorilla show?
No, look, let's make it about you now. I mean, look, include the gorilla show if you want, but what have been some of just the greatest things that you've experienced at these Fringe festivals?
I don't know. I'm very much like the festivals that we have done together. I'm very much, which is a bit dumb. Like the performance is really secondary for me. I'm much more about the life, right? So the adventures of going to the Kangaroo Pub, little in-jokes such as the gorilla show and the dice game that we play around the place where it's just rolling a dice, and it's like if I roll a 4, every time you go to the toilet, you got to pull your pants down around your ankles and things like that. It's mainly just hanging out with like-minded people who to have a laugh and have fun have been
dickheads.
Pretty much the highlight. Yeah, dickheads. I like dickheads. But I can't. I mean, I've done festivals in like Southeast Asia and these places, but I don't know. Edinburgh's always great and horrible, and it's a real gamut. But I don't know what a highlight would be.
I mean, do you have any favourite festivals out of that the lot that you've done?
I do really love. Weirdly, I like Adelaide. It's my hometown. I see my family. I'm ticking off a bunch of boxes. It's got a really good artist bar, but is also possibly the hardest festival in the world.
Yeah.
Dumb. It's like I'm a glutton for punishment. Those bigger ones are the ones where you find the crazy shows, and like you and I do this, where we'll try and find the weird show.
Yeah.
Like the Charles Horse lays an egg. The
what the fuck is this?
The Alistair lists everything. These shows which in smaller festivals don't really happen, but my favorite. I like doing Victoria in British Columbia in Canada, mainly because there's a group of us that go whale watching all the time, and I like seeing whales.
Again, it's not about the shows at all, is it?
And I sell out that one. The ones where you're selling out everything, where you don't have to be pressured on anything, is always good. So Edmonton, Victoria, Vancouver, for like audiences and being successful, and these ones. But then like Adelaide and Edinburgh for experience are amazing.
Well, because I've not done these yet. I would love to, but the Canadian Fringe circuit seems to be the one that suits you the most, because it seems to have that element of chance about it as well, with the whole lottery system. So did you tell me you found yourself for the first year with the lottery? It's basically you're put in a venue. It's a complete lottery, whatever venue you get. And weren't you put in some enormous one for your first year of doing the talk show?
Quite often you're in, I did one festival where I was in the main. I did the San Diego festival a couple of years ago, and they put me in the biggest theater in town, which was over I don't know 1,000 seats or something like that. And again, there was like, even with 100 people, which is a good audience for a Fringe festival, it felt so big. Yeah.
But does that work, the whole lottery system with the venues?
Yeah. I think the registration to get in is higher, so it's a bit more of a community thing. It's a bit more the fringes in Canada are seen as like it's the city's thing. It's not really there to make tons and tons of money. They put the artists and the audiences. That's the main thing that they're into. Whereas I feel like some of the bigger festivals are more about the venues making money and the sponsors and all of this stuff, whereas Canadian festivals don't really have sponsors or anything like that. They keep
it seems
low so everyone can go.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like they've sort of retained the Fringe ethos.
Yeah, they really do abide by that because they're polite Canadians, and that's the rules are there, and that's what the rules are. Yeah,
it's all about the rules. And have you noticed the change then over the years of doing it? Because you've been doing it for a decade now, and like, have you noticed the change in Fringe spirit or Fringe festivals? Or
yeah, for sure. I think you just can't survive as an artist doing festivals. I can because I don't pay bills or rent. Which is
wow.
And I don't have a baby, and I don't have this stuff, so I manage to make it work. I make that system work for me, but only barely. And so I don't do Edinburgh anymore because I can't afford it, and I don't do Melbourne Comedy Festival anymore because it's not worth paying so much money for that risk. It's too big a risk, those ones now. Yeah. So it has changed a bit in that, and I personally think it's possibly, it's probably Netflix's fault.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, why would you go and take a chance on a show that could be shit, or could be a guy dressed in a rabbit throwing carrots at you, when you can watch Chris Rock, an actual good stand-up at home for free? Why would you pay money?
Why would you?
I think society is taking less risks on theatre, and I think that's what we'll see tonight with the Gorilla Show. If you want, I do have to go, but I can talk to you afterwards and let you know what happened with the Gorilla Show, because this will be a real test, I think.
Do you know what? Should we do that? Should we do a little post-Gorilla chat as well for 5 minutes?
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it's going to go this time, right? In this big venue, 8:30, it's not the late night thing.
It's really not. It's prime time.
It's like the festival are like, yep, let's, they're commercializing the Gorilla, so it'll be funny.
Oh, do you know what? Let's do it. Yeah. I'm well up for that. Let's end this conversation now, and we will do a post-Gorilla chat.
Yep. I will see you soon.
Thanks, mate. Speak to you in a bit.
Thank you.
So, end of part one. Now, I may have seemed a bit obsessed with trying to categorise Jon there, wondering what genre he chooses to classify each show as, but I think it's a particularly pertinent question to ask when it comes to what he does. We have so many subgenres for music. I recently found out there's a style of house music known as fidget, but relatively few when it comes to categorising arts festival shows. Most festivals offer theatre, cabaret and comedy. Edinburgh has the extra section spoken word, where I've placed 3 of my shows in the past, as that seems to incorporate storytelling and poetry. It's a tiny, often overlooked section, but one that seems to generate the right kind of audience for those shows. I feel the comedy section can often lead to audiences expecting a certain number of gags per minute, and the theatre section often suggests loftier ideals, a certain seriousness, or more of a narrative than that show might contain. I recall Jon telling me about an audience member who came to him quite disgruntled after a performance of Pretending Things Are a Cock, complaining there were no actual cocks in it. And I feel she'd have been disappointed regardless of what section he put the show in. And a slightly troubling admission by Jon at the end there, that the only way he makes the Fringe circuit work for him financially is to have no fixed home, no children and minimal possessions. It's an increasingly prevalent issue raised by performers at these festivals that after an often difficult 3, 4, sometimes 5 week slog, not to mention the months agonisingly constructing the shows, they somehow come out of the experience worse off financially than when they went in, while bars, venues and the festivals themselves, of course, coin it in. An interesting development in Perth is the recent inception of a Gorilla Festival, spelt Guerrilla, I should add, especially in light of this episode, to combat the rising fees having to be paid by the artists out there. Adelaide Fringe managed to do away with its artist ticketing fees a couple of years ago in an initiative with the South Australian government, but even then I came out of last year's festival in debt, with a commercially and critically successful show. I've been touring all over the world, spending vast sums of money in every waking hour in Adelaide to try and get bums on seats. It seems that every Fringe festival, sadly, eventually becomes what they're trying to combat, with artists shelling out so much for venue hire, producers, marketing, PR, brochure entries, accommodation, etc., that ticket prices inevitably have to be raised, making these open access festivals anything but for performer and audience alike. The free Fringe and pay what you want models, mentioned time and again in this podcast, have revolutionised Edinburgh Fringe for both parties. And it'll be interesting to see what happens out in Australia in the next few years, as it's very obvious a shake-up is needed. But for the final part of this episode, it's back to Australia we go for the other spelling of gorilla, with a match report from Jon.
So, how did it go?
Right. I've lost my voice a bit.
So it went well then.
From some yelling. It was.
Okay,
I think I've seen maybe. Oh, I don't even know. Like what? 20 gorilla shows.
Sure,
maybe?
It's a lot.
So it was somewhere, in the middle. I give it 3 stars.
3 stars. Interesting. That's I think wasn't that one of the quotes on the poster once? Was seminal 3 stars.
Seminal 3 stars. Yeah.
Fantastic quote. So because there've been a few in Perth now, so are people wise to it?
It was mainly people who had been before.
As well. It's a big old venue.
Also, it had that element of the first few where there were probably like 20 people who didn't know what they were watching.
Great, despite it being very clearly spelled out on the title.
Yes, but I think maybe who knows? But
who knows?
Lots of people walked. All those 20 people walked out
at the same time.
No, at different varying times, and
were they booed, as is so often the way?
Yes, quite maliciously, which made
because what I love is the rules that are established silently. At nearly every gorilla show that I've seen is you leave, you get booed.
Yeah.
However, you come back in with a drink, you get cheered, and or in some cases, maybe
a few of like, oh, they're back, and then they got cheered again. Yeah, but you could tell that people were very scared to leave. Like they really wanted to.
Of course. It could be quite intimidating. I've obviously started thinking about all the ones that I've seen, and probably one of my favourite moments was I don't know if it was the first one, but it was an early one in Adelaide, I think, and I think we were all stood at the back. There was you, me, Alistair, Tremblay, Birchall. There were a few of us, and just watching it what was the venue? I can't even. I think it must have been Tuxedo Cat, but I can't remember which one. And these 3 or 4 guys came in, a little bit drunk, a little bit alpha male kind of thing, and we're all there just stood watching the gorilla. It's standing room only. We stood there watching this gorilla rocking in a chair, and these guys came in and got actively furious about it. I seem to remember.
Yeah, that was
what's going on.
That was the one where Angus Hodge got a beer thrown on him.
Yes, exactly, by those guys.
It was Thomas Ford, I think. And that was the one. That was my favourite one as well. That's where they had the gorilla rocking a live cross to a gorilla in Underbelly, London, rocking.
Was it?
And that's where Steve Sheehan, I know we brought up started putting a ramp under the gorilla, and he started rocking up.
Oh, I remember the ramp.
It was like he's going to do a jump, but you can't take from it, so they pulled the ramp away before or anything.
Weirdly, I remember the ramp, but I don't remember the live link up.
That was also when a polar bear, someone dressed as a polar bear, came in, just picked up a chair and just like studied the gorilla on stage. And that is when I had a rabbit outfit and that I wore in my dad's death show. And Bron, my producer, was like, go and get your rabbit. So I put my rabbit outfit on, and I sat just on the corner of the stage, just looking really like sad and forlorn. And so it was just this weird.
Yes, that's right.
And that was when the Bucks night came in, and they were like, "What is this?" And then they were saying, "Is this Fringe?
Yeah.
Is this Fringe?" And then people were,
"Is it Fringe?" Yeah.
And
it definitely is.
And they're like, "So, what happens in this?" And they're like, well, it's on the poster there. It says it there. And then they're like, so is this art? Is this art?
That's right.
And then we were like, well, yeah. So. And then they were like, no, this isn't art. And then they said to Angus, what is stopping me from going and punching that gorilla in the face? And I think it was either Angus or Thomas who said something like, well, what is stopping you? Is this challenging for you? Are you finding this difficult? And then they threw the beer on them and were like, come on, guys, we're out of here.
Yeah, that's right. But there was one line that I remember that was fantastic. I think whoever said it, maybe it was Al, goes, I don't know, it's a kind of social experiment. And then one of them goes, yeah, but where do we see the results? That was what he was most angry about.
I like that. That was a good one. That's been my favourite. That was the one where Dan walked naked in the first bit, and then it got quite full on. But then there was the other one.
There was a streaker. There was a ramp. Yeah, it was pretty wild. And the gorilla, and then he got punched.
Yeah. Well, the other one that sort of peaked in that way, where some of the rules of don't make it about yourself, because everyone was it was getting rowdy and everything, and then Trigby, Wakenshaw, Iman, and a bunch of other people just got naked and stood up the back to see if anyone would notice, and no one noticed. That was great.
Oh God! And then there was another one in talking of sort of stage invaders. There was one in Edinburgh where, I don't know if you saw this one. It was someone walked in with a gorilla outfit, but in a dress, with a sign. It was a sign saying on one side gorilla, and then on the other side of the sign it said jobs for women, and just sat on the stage for about 5 minutes and then left.
Oh no, that's the other thing as well. That's that same one where the polar bear watching the gorilla with the rabbit sitting in the front, the ramp, the gorilla on the screen behind it, and then in the last 2 minutes, Alistair Tremblay Birchall had a gorilla type outfit that he wore in his show as well, and he walked onto the stage, just looked at the gorilla, nodded, and turned around and walked out, which I thought was pretty great. No, you're already here. Fine.
God, that was a busy show, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's been the best one. That's been the one that's stuck in my mind that made me want to go to it more.
So this one, yeah,
it's all too in jokey. It's two guys fought on stage and ripped each other's shirts off, and they were arguing, they were yelling whether it's art or not, and caused a big scene, and then they kissed. Because people started chanting kiss, so then they kissed. There was a giant bear, this massive bear thing sitting up the back.
He sent me the picture.
Who came in, and he was very aggressive. He came in early, and the front of house were like, get out. And he refused to, and then lay on the steps for a bit, and then tried to run away. This was before the show even started.
Wow.
Then he did leave. And then he came back in very angrily. And, then one of the front of house people went up and sat next to him because they thought he was going to be volatile. And then, of course, the tech started playing romantic music because they were sitting close to each other. And then for about 5 minutes, everyone just watched them and not the gorilla. And the front of house guy started going for it and moving closer and trying to put his arm around this bear. And then everyone started saying, animals can't consent, which was quite good. Quite funny.
Because how many were in?
Only probably started with about 50 or 60 and then ended with about 40.
Okay.
There was a lovely, beautiful Indian couple in their saris and everything who walked out quite quickly.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Because it's still quite a niche thing out there, because I saw it last summer in Edinburgh in the 400 and something seat Underbelly venue, and that was packed, and that got volatile. That was about 1 a.m, and that got pretty heated. There was drinks were thrown, groups of men were escorted out. It's got a bit feral. I missed the days when it was in 40-seaters playing to people who would, critique it.
Yes, this one was
themselves like an art piece.
Less drunken. but still a bit. It was weird, but it was good. There were lots of good lines and stuff said.
But 3 stars overall.
Yeah, I think I got some good, but now I can't remember.
Thanks for the report, mate. Well, I'll let you conserve your voice. Anyway, how many more shows have you got left in Perth yourself?
2 more, just 2 more.
Oh, shit. Because I was going to say this goes out on Friday, so that's after those have happened. I'm sorry about that.
Cool. No, it goes out Friday. That's when I'm doing my encore of the... Because I told you all my shows, they get to rate it at the end. The audience gets to give their rating. So whichever one gets the highest rating, I will do as an encore show.
Fantastic. Oh, well, that's good. Yeah. And then where are you off to next?
Then Adelaide and Wellington, and then over to States. Then the tour starts. So then I'm all over the joint forever, and I'm doing a variety of all different 8 shows or whatever. I'm doing Rabbit Night in Edmonton.
Right. Do you know what? Normally I would just say plug your show to people, but like given that it's you, I'll just tell people to look at your website and see the multitude of shows that are going on. Yeah. Because it's confusing me.
Friday will be How I Learned to Hug. I don't know if anyone in Perth will be listening to this then, but
this podcast's big in Perth.
Be How I Learned to Hug because someone gave it 10 million out of 10 stars.
Well, keep attracting weirdos and doing weird shit, and I will hopefully see you somewhere on the planet at some point.
Yeah, I might plan it to come to London at the end of September.
Ah, great. That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Cheers for doing this.
All right. We'll see you later.
There you go, little bonus bit for you there for those who are wondering what happens when you put someone in a gorilla costume, in a rocking chair, in an old man costume, in a big theatre tent in Perth at 8:30. So that's your answer. Thanks again for listening. I will be back next time with Misbehave, as promised in the previous podcast. She's out in Vegas at the moment, and I'll be talking to her about her brilliant, bizarre game show. Do keep the emails coming in, spiritsofthefringe@gmail.com for any suggestions for future shows and, of course, your favourite Fringe moment. It's already quite a long podcast, so I won't be reading any out this time. I will do some next week instead. So, once again, cheers. See you next time.